I will indeed keep my home.
Rose McGee is keeping her home.
Whose house?
Rose's house!
Whose house?
Rose's house!
Thanks to her persistence through a struggle that played out in neighborhoods, synagogues, churches, banks, and ultimately the state capitol, she reached a deal with lenders that will let her keep her Golden Valley home. In so doing, she has become a hero of the anti-foreclosure movement. Many other homeowners will benefit because of her fight. Last year, CitiBank foreclosed on her home after telling McGee for months it was working on a plan to save it. The unfair process known as dual tracking was one reason CitiBank and other major lenders had to pay billions in a national settlement. In Minnesota, McGee's case inspired several groups to lobby the legislature for a homeowner bill of rights that would outlaw dual tracking. The bill passed the state Senate and House nearly unanimously in the final days of the 2013 legislative session. Governor Dayton signed the bill into law on May 24th.
And when it happens to you, that's when you know good full and well that it is, it's real.
Hear this bill! Hear this bill!
The bill, sponsored by State Senator Patricia Torres Rey and Representative Melissa Hortman, followed an earlier, more ambitious effort by Representative Mike Freiberg, which didn't receive the support of banks and died in committee.
And banks shouldn't be able to take your house if you can save it.
1,997 homes in Rice County.
Housing justice groups such as Isaiah, Jewish Community Action, Minnesotans for a Fair Economy, Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, and Occupy Homes worried that banking interests had killed the effort, and they staged protests at the Capitol. Everyone from Occupy Homes activists to U.S. Congressman Keith Ellison came to support homeowners such as Rose McGee and spoke out in favor of a homeowner bill of rights.
That the people should have a good home to live in. Right. And that while we got millions of people across America and thousands here in Minnesota homeless, I'm on the side of Rose McGee, not the side of Fannie, Freddie, or Citi.
Banks got bailed out!
We got sold out!
Well, we've been chanting that for over a year. And we know that now is the time for real and tangible change.
We're now switching the tables and turning the tides. We're going on offense. We're demanding that these bankers be held accountable to the same standard that Rose does.
The banks represent their shareholders. The politicians represent the people who they represent. And if you're in Congress or the state legislature, you know, your first consideration as to what's good should not be how does a privately held corporation feel about it. It should be what is in the best interest of the people.
The interfaith group Isaiah held more than a dozen town hall-style gatherings where they encouraged people to call their lawmakers and push for homeowner rights legislation.
We had a vigil outside of Senator Metzen's office that went for a full day, and I think that was a very positive influence on it. I think people meeting with their legislators created a groundswell of support that made it really important to move something out of that committee.
And Torres Rey and Hortman refused to let the initiative die. They sought the help of legal aid and progressive lobbyist Ron Elwood, who quietly worked behind the scenes with banks and their attorneys.
The process to move the Homeowners Bill of Rights has not been a simple process, neither in the Senate or the House. Unfortunately, what we have is a different bill that came to us by legal aid. Legal aid proposed to put a provision forward that will make sure that in Minnesota, the industry cannot move, the banks cannot move into foreclosure until they comply with federal regulations that are already in place. Almost 170,000 people have lost their homes in Minnesota, and these individuals, members, only have us to represent them here.
All parties ultimately agreed on a bill that would ban dual tracking and include a private right of action for homeowners. But banks nixed the third component of Freiberg's bill, mandatory mediation. The push for mandatory mediation could emerge next session.
I think we can certainly do part of it this session. The question is whether we get all of it done this session or not, and that may be less likely. I think everybody understands there's still an issue that we need to deal with regard to foreclosures, but understanding what's happened so far and how much that's been effective, what's happened at the federal level and how that interacts with what we want to do at the state.
On May 16th, the state Senate passed the bill by a vote of 61-1. 3 days later, the House approved it 123-0.
It's a compromise between the bankers and the consumers' advocates to give our consumers a little bit more protection in a foreclosure situation.
Housing justice groups declared a resounding victory, and Minnesota will soon join California as the second state with a homeowner bill of rights.
For us, it's an unbelievable show of bipartisan support for this issue. The California Homeowner Bill of Rights cut foreclosures by over 60% since the day it was passed. There were multiple times in this legislative session when this bill was dead in the water. Senators had threatened to not hear the bill. On the House side, it felt like there wasn't enough confidence to keep it moving. And so it's pretty clear to me, and I think others in this coalition, that it's the on-the-ground pressure that has really been the difference maker.
Of course, I'm happy with the bill because of where it stands, but certainly there's room for some strengthening in the bill. But hey, what's there is some pretty powerful stuff as well.
What remains to be seen is how the homeowner rights legislation will impact communities of color, which were hit hardest by the economic recession and foreclosure crisis.
I have grandchildren that grew up here, and whenever other family members have a problem, they know that they can always come and stay here.
We're releasing a report today called Wasted Wealth, which details the fact that communities of color have been preyed on at a much higher level than other folks. It's something we knew. We now have a report that gives the facts and figures. There were hundreds of millions of dollars that have been really stripped from communities of color, and we need a comprehensive set of legislation that's going to really address that issue. It's great that this bill passes, but if it doesn't affect our members and the people in this community in East St. Paul and Frogtown and Phillips neighborhood, and frankly throughout the state, minority borrowers, then it hasn't had the effect that it needs to, and we got more to do.
I live in a district where I have predominantly working middle-class individuals. When I started door knocking 7 years ago, I almost never saw an empty house in District 63, Minneapolis, and now I have Ridgeville. During the last 3 years, I have seen so many empty homes, individuals who work, individuals with families, with young families, who have lost their homes and right now are homeless. A significant number of Latinos and African American who invested in their homes, who bought a home for the first time and used all of their savings, and now they are homeless.
Depending on the housing recovery, the legislature may have to revisit homeowner rights in 2014. But for now, Rose McGee is celebrating both her home and her victory at the Capitol.
We are celebrating on my birthday, May 28th. We're going to start out with a soulful breakfast of grits and biscuits.
For The Uptake, this is Jakob Wheeler.